The Burnout Economy. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Ainslie Insights, brought to you by Ainslie Bullion, Ainslie Crypto, and the Gold and Silver Standard as the Ainslie Group celebrates 50 years. Today, welcome back Alex, who's been exploring the concept of the burnout economy and how Australia in particular might be at risk. How are you going, Alex?
I'm going very well. How are you?
I'm very well as well. Interesting topic today. I knew bits of this, but I hadn't really heard it brought together the way you did. That was really good. And talking about it under this heading of the burnout economy. So, can you start us off by just explaining what you mean by this concept, and in particular, what makes Australia, New Zealand, Canada, very similar economies susceptible to this phenomenon?
So it was coined by an independent Australian economist, Tarric Brooker, about a year or two ago. And it's basically saying what we've been saying for ages, the RBA is working against the government. So the government is doing inflationary and the RBA is deflationary. And if you can think about a car doing a burnout, wheels are spinning and it's not going anywhere. And that is basically what's been going on with the Australian, Canadian, and New Zealand economies. I mean, Canada's last decade is about half as good as Japan's lost decade. So, these economies are really struggling. And that's in regard to GDP per capita in particular. Now, if you look at why they're most susceptible, is that house prices in all three of those economies have been going up. So investors just got lazy.
Hmm.
You've got high migration. Let's just invest in houses. We'll make money. So no one's investing in businesses. So this, the capital that would have been used and used to be used to invest in business and create, entrepreneurs, businesses, productivity improvements has been very lazily invested in housing by individuals. And then the government is just spending money to keep us afloat whilst high immigration. So our GDP looks good, but we keep going backwards with GDP per capita. Today's announcement by the RBA saw the quarterly GDP go up by 0.3%, which was well below what people were expecting. They
Hmm.
were expecting about 0.5. Now, zero point 0.5 is in line with our migration. So in the last quarter, so in 3 months, Australia on a per capita basis just went backwards 0.2% for every single person. It's insane.
And I mean, everything you've just described there is obviously impacting everyone across the economy. But you highlighted in the article the impact on young people in particular. And I thought that was a bit that hit me when you're looking at people in the prime years for starting families, they're disproportionately affected by this. And I just think that's going to have long term societal and economic consequences because you've got declining fertility rates and reduce spending among that demographic. It makes sense why that's the case because of that burnout phenomenon you just described, but it's a real problem.
Yeah, I mean, we keep bringing up fertility, we keep bringing in immigrants, but we're not treating our fertility rates. Now, the chart that we put on today shows consumer spending and how it's dropped since 2022. Uh, the boomers above 75 have increased by about 8%. The age group 25 to 29, which seems to be the worst affected, was about 13% drop
Mm.
in free money because, well, money to spend because their mortgages have gone up so much they have no money. Now, if your free cash to spend goes down 13%, you're not really thinking, I want a baby now. So, they've punished the wrong part of the economy. There were so many things they could have done. You could have put GST up so it was at least even. You could have taxed the higher end of the older end of the economy to decrease their spending. But what actually then ends up happening is you've got the 25s to 40s dropping their spending. So that's deflationary. And then you've got the boomers spending like it's, spending to their grave. They're not going to give anything back, I don't think. And so that's creating inflation. And so even in that phenomenon, you've got a burnout going on where the young people who should be spending and having fun are going backwards and the old people are going forwards and tires are spinning again. And they want babies and they're not coming.
And it's a funny visual to imagine that it's the oldies being the burnouts here that are doing
Kind
popping
of
the
like
burnouts in the middle of the street as an analogy, but
kind of
it's
like watching the old person in their car, their Porsche with the roof back, driving into the sunset, driving at 50 miles an hour because they can afford the big car. And, everyone else who's young and should be having their beautiful cars can't afford them.
and I mean it's not an easy challenge, and we joke about it there, and we use the term boomer lightheartedly. Um, it is difficult because certainly people in that demographic are going, well, I worked hard for this. We went through a whole lot of challenging economic environments through our working lives. We should be able to benefit from what we've managed to achieve over that period of time, because they certainly took risks, and they're being rewarded down the track. So it's easy to sort of shout it, arm in the sky, shout it. It's all the boomers' fault, but it just doesn't work in the current dynamic, in the current balance. And you gave a really interesting example of where it hasn't been as bad, which is in the US. And if you could maybe talk about that a little bit, because I thought that was quite fascinating when you had some really not necessarily great demographics there either, but strategies and policies that seem to be in place that seemed at least to improve the outcome that they've experienced.
Yeah, so I mean, the easiest way probably to look at that is they are investing. They invest in business, they invest in the share market, they invest in AI, they invest in oil. We don't. New Zealand doesn't, Canada doesn't. And I mean, I've gone through how Canada started taxing capital gains. It's just destroyed things. Australia has one of the highest corporation tax rates.
Mm.
We are punishing being in business and hoping people go into business all at the same time. What's the point? And then, excess red tape. There was I didn't put it in today. There was an interesting graph about Idaho that Elon Musk posted today, where they've reduced their red tape, significantly reduced their red tape. So what America is doing is they are trying to promote business, reduce red tape, lower tax rates, encourage investment. And that is not, and I mean, they're still spending like crazy, like Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. That is still going on. But the difference is they're encouraging business. These other countries just are not.
And I think to wrap this up, then, what is your advice there? Because obviously you've got examples, and I know you've brought that up so many times before. The red tape that gets in the way, the bureaucracy that gets in the way of actually encouraging businesses. Is it an approach that needs to be taken across the board? Is it effectively our own version of the Department of Government Efficiency that you mentioned previously in an article in the US to really cut some of that out? What's the Australian context solution here in your mind?
Well, the middle generations that should be having kids the governments need to work out how not to punish them. They need to stop being inflationary and causing the RBA to do the only blunt tool thing that they can do, which is continually raise interest rates. Because there's other ways. There's personal taxation, red tape. I mean, it's insane. Let's not be beat around that bush. Let's get rid of that. And then the final thing is seriously look at these corporate tax rates. I mean, you need to look at a business for what it is. They invest. People in Australia are not. They're investing in houses because that seems easy. Why don't you encourage people to invest in businesses? It's not like if a business tax rate's at 10% and you're a business owner and you're taxed at 50%, you're still taxed at that rate. So you've got the credit at 10 and 50. We shouldn't lose tax, but by dropping just the corporate tax rate, it should encourage at least investment. And we don't look at it that way. Everyone just thinks because you're a business owner and you're taxed at 30%, that's what the tax rate is. Well, it's not. It's still 50%. You're still taxed at the higher rate when you take that money out. So it just encourages investment in the middle, and they are not doing that.
And I really do encourage people to think about that a little bit more, because it's an easy argument to make that you just need to tax businesses more because they're the ones making all the profit. You make a very good point. It's ultimately to get that profit out, you still are paying the personal rate on it.
Absolutely.
That's what happens. And part of what isn't appreciated there is the risk taking. I mean, I see that all the time, that you're not prepared to take a risk if the hurdle is too high to start up a business. And that's why so many, we know how many small businesses fail initially. You've got to have those incentives in place. So yeah, it's a tough one, and just trying to tax the business aspect of it is not a solution. You've really highlighted
and
that.
then what Canada's done, which is way worse than here, which is probably why they're collapsing at a rate faster than anyone else. The capital gains tax is just outrageous what they've done over there. I mean, talk about just ruining an economy.
Well, hopefully we don't continue to follow down that path, but some excellent advice there, as always, Alex, and a great deep dive on this burnout. I've still got pictures of boomers burning out on their mobility scooters, but that's just the picture that came to my mind. Not judging. Thanks again, as always, for your work on that today.
Thank you again.
Thanks everyone for watching. We'll chat again soon.